It was the start of a new season, some old faces and some new. They were ready for the competition. Riverside Park Speedway night number 1. And before the event even went to green, there was trouble. Tommy Bowles and Reggie Ruggiero under hot laps would tangle with Charlie Pastriak. And the defending champion, Reggie Ruggiero, was out of the event before the race would begin. But once under green, it was Bruce D'Alessandro who'd run to the front of the field. Dan Avery would move to the inside before contact was made with tour star Mikey Winitska. And this would shuffle the deck. Involved would be Teddy Christopher, Ricky Summers, and Stan Greger. For Greger, his night had ended before the first night would almost begin. When it was back to green, the field was starting to string out when suddenly John Zavisa would cut a right rear. He'd quickly head to the pit or ran me back into the hunt, heading back to the front of the field. D'Alessandro was now challenged by Zavisa, who had worked his way from the back of the pack and would take over the lead. Night number 1, the record books would show it was John Zavisa into the winner's circle. On night number 2, it was John Zavisa and Reggie Ruggiero by luck of the draw. But the veteran Ruggiero would start to pull away. But in the middle of the pack, Charlie Pastriak would get crossed up with car number 5. Bruce D'Alessandro and John Zavisa were battling with Jerry Marquis to get to the front of the field, but Reggie Ruggiero was the class of the show. He would win night number 2. During the third week of competition, veteran drivers Bob Povereri and Stan Greger would duke it out at the front of the field. Greger would run to the inside, but Povereri would be equally as strong to the outside. Coming to the front of the field was also Ruggiero and John Zavisa, and Charlie Pastriak would come together. Jerry Marquis would be involved, so would Ricky Summers. But for Bob Povereri, his night would end with a mechanical problem. It was then Ruggiero who would challenge Greger for position number 1. Ruggiero stuck like glue on the bottom. He'd try his best, then take over the number 1 spot to secure the victory in night number 3. The fourth night of competition, Ed Kennedy and Ricky Summers would give him a run among the top 5 early in the event. Then trouble would develop. Dan Avery, Brad Hietala, and the rest of the field would scramble. Avery's hopes had suddenly fallen by the wayside when they were 3 wide as Chris Gilbeck would go to the bottom. Ricky Summers stuck in the middle. Then Jerry Pearl would get tagged to the outside with car number 9. It was then Stan Greger who'd come back to life as he'd work his way among the top 10. Bruce D'Alessandro was threading the needle too, but off the fourth turn it was Greger who hold on to win his first of the season. The fifth week of competition saw more great racing action. Ricky Summers would try to get to the front of the field, and veteran Povereri was looking for his first win, when suddenly rookie Johnson would get out of shape, Nels Lindstedt would be involved, and then there'd be a massive jam up in turn 1. Bob Povereri was right in the middle of this with a lot of the other front-running cars. It was Dan Avery and Marcel Luttrell who was running strong when Brian Schofield would literally hand grenade into the wall with car number 09 and warn Eric Leclerc about the unfortunate situation. Back at the front of this field, Avery was now pressured heavily by Reggie Ruggiero. Late in the event, Ruggiero would take over the number 1 spot, forcing Avery to settle for second, not to his liking, as Ruggiero would take down the win. Brian Schofield would lead night number 6. Chris Gilbeck and Johnson would try to give him a run for the money, but the real action was further back in the pack. John Cody literally rode over Milikowski's number 88. But late in the event, Jerry Marquis and Povereri had put on the show as Marquis would secure his first win. On night number 7 in the competition, Reggie Ruggiero was coming to the front of the field from the middle of the pack. He put the pressure on as Chris Bonuito would be tagged and literally go around with Brad Hietala with car number 54. John Zavisa and Charlie Pastriak would tangle, and Bruce D'Alessandro would head to the pits with car number 90. Dan Avery was the star of this week as Reggie Ruggiero would hunt him down as Ed Kennedy would try to contend. Late in the event, Avery, the leader, would slam the wall hard, giving Ruggiero the victory with car number 44. On night number 8, it was John Zavisa who had muscled his way to the front of this field. Brad Hietala was looking good when Wade Cole would get crossed up and literally pinned Dan Avery up against the wall. Caution would come out, and back to green, it was Ruggiero and the number 01 of Zavisa. Ruggiero would drift up, a controversial night.
I always figured Reggie to be a real professional, but he didn't show very much professionalism tonight. All he had to do was back out of it a little bit and settle in for second. His car just wasn't fast enough to get by mine, and he kept trying, and the end result was he drove it in over his head and he ran into me.
But for Bruce D'Alessandro, the story was they said he was involved. He'd have to go to the back of the pack, and he did. While Povereri was running at the front of the field, he would hold on to secure his first win of the 1989 season. During night number 9 in the competition, it was Tommy Bowles who slingshotted out in front of John Zavisa. Stan Greger would try to move into the hunt, and Dan Avery was looking for another victory with car number 10. But it was Greger who gave Bowles a real run for the money, drifting up slightly to take over the lead. Bowles had no place to go, but made contact with the wall. It was Ruggiero and Greger, the dynamic duo to battle, as Bowles went sliding through the center of the infield and made contact with the fire truck. He'd resume, but the excitement was still just as heated on the racetrack itself as Greger would take down the win. The 10th night of competition, it was Ricky Summers and Dan Avery who were hungry for a victory. Avery had pulled away from the field, and Summers was not letting him get far out of his sight. Further back, Jerry Marquis would literally ride over Ed Kennedy. Bruce D'Alessandro, in quest of the points, would be involved, and Tommy Bowles and John Cody would be the stars of this show as Bowles would take down the win. It was Ed Kennedy to make him work for it on night number 11. As Brian Schofield would go to the outside, Tom Bowles was back in the thick of things, and so wasn't Jerry Marquis. But it was Reggie Ruggiero who was down in on the bottom like usual, who was trying to get to the front of this field. But Brian Schofield gave it his best. The little motor that could would take down the night's victory. On night number 12, Wade Cole was trying to get to the front of this field, but John Savisa was battling with Polverari, and the two would tangle. Dan Avery would sneak his way by. Then late in the event, John Zavisa would have his share of problems. Satsworley's first visit had ended with car number 4 as Dan Avery and the Reds would battle at the front of this field, with Avery taking down the victory. The 13th night of competition saw more of the best in the modified division. They were ready to go the distance once again, and it was veteran Polverari who'd give car number 90, Bruce D'Alessandro, a run at the front of this field. Ricky Summers and Chris Kopech would try to run strong, as Greger would drop off the pace with car 28 with a left flat rear tire. He would go around, bringing out a caution. But for Bob Polverari, it was an easy victory, with car number 711, his second of the season. The 14th night saw Stan Greger battling with Rodinas on the outside with car number 24. Ricky Summers was looking strong. He'd hold off Jerry Marquis for a while. As the three would battle, Rodinas would go around off turn number 4. But it was Stan Greger, once again, the class of the field. John Cody would give Fran Principe a good run for the money on the start of this event before the veterans like D'Alessandro, Greger, and Avery would come to the front of this field. Schofield would get crossed up. The shock would be felt further back. Then he'd do it again. Brad Hightower was also a victim, and so was Ricky Summers. For Reggie Ruggiero, it was sheet metal damage, but that wouldn't hold him back, as Ruggiero was fighting back now for position number 2. But Marquis was way out in front. As Ruggiero had taken over the number 2 spot, Marquis was driving the victory lane. On the 16th night of competition, Mighty Mike Stefanik would return to the park. He would run to the bottom side of the racetrack and quickly pull away at the front of the field. Rodinas and Ricky Summers would give him a run for the money. Then the Reds would come from the back of the pack. Like days of old and deja vu, Ruggiero was now leading Stefanik into turn number 1. It was Reggie Ruggiero setting the pace to hold on and take down the victory. The 17th night of competition, it was Rick Summers looking for his first win. Avery was trying to run the outside, and Ruggiero was right there in the hunt like usual with car number 44. It was Dan Avery who was now pressured by the Reg on the bottom. As he made it look so easy, he'd take over the lead when Stan Greger would go around with a cut tire with car 28. It was the 6th win of the season for Reggie Ruggiero. And for Stan Greger, win number 4 would come on night number 18 as he'd be back in the winner's circle. The 19th night of competition, it was Brad Hightower who tried to hold off John Zavisa early in the event. Bruce D'Alessandro and Jerry Marquis would put on an impressive show. As the two would get sideways, Marquis would pick up the spot. D'Alessandro would try to fight back and maintain the points. But it was Brad Hightower who was looking at his first victory ever in the Winston Racing Series Modified. And for Bruce D'Alessandro, besides that, we'll go back and recap the excitement from the high banks of Monadnock Motor Raceway with a look at the Modified and the Pro Stock. But right now, it's time to go back where it was a little bit warmer on this day as we take a look at the chill-out from Waterford. It was by far the coldest event of the season, but the Modifieds came out in full force for this one. There were some 600 fans who braved temperatures in the teens to watch the excitement of this event. And they were prepared, all bundled up when the feature event rolled around and the excitement began on the racetrack. It was Jim Broderick to the inside of Glenn Sullivan in row number 1. Second row, defending champion Bob Potter, and outside of him, the number 11 of Rod Toba. Into turn number 1, Broderick looked good, but already things were getting diced up as Rick Young would falter on the outside. Mark Riccara would look good to the inside when Potter would have a problem and drop off the pace with car 31. Ted Christopher was also showing some life as he was being pressured heavily by the talents of Glenn Sullivan. Then trouble would develop in the turn. Involved in this one was Rick Young. Kenny Barnett would be involved, and so would Scott Gorman with car number 99. The leader would squeak by, but would get a bath as he dived to the infield, but still set the pace, and Jeff Berry was now in command. 4 of the front-running machines was involved in this mix-up, and this would change the whole complexion of this event as the field would go back to green. Broderick was looking strong, challenging among the top 5 as he would go to the outside, as Bunnell would keep it low and pick up the spot. It was Ted Christopher who was trying to make some moves when suddenly Cushing would go around with car number 81. That would again create a little bit of a problem as the lead pack of cars would scramble. The field would again be tightened up and look to go racing. It was Jeff Berry who was now pressured heavily by Rick Donnelly to the outside. The battle that occurred earlier was happening all over again between Bunnell and Broderick. Suddenly, contact was made. Broderick would go up high, and Bunnell would be in as the 2 cars would tangle and bring out yet another caution in the event. Also involved in another mix-up was Phil Rondo with car number 8. But the field was still ready to go back to green, and Donnelly now would make contact with Jeff Berry. Gary Leach and Mark Riccaro were still challenging, and Teddy Christopher was now up to the top 5. When Riccaro and Ron Rocco would come together, as the 2 would tangle and spin, yet another caution would come out of the racetrack. Now it was Rick Donnelly pressured heavily by Ted Christopher, who had worked his way up to challenge for position number 2. Minor contact was made, but Donnelly was trying to hold on. He would set the pace in second. Larry Ross was right there on his back bumper, and Lloyd Agar was looking strong, trying to work his way among the top 5 cars. But it was a hands-down victory for Jeff Berry as he would hold on and take down the win. Rick Donnelly would finish in second, Teddy Christopher was third, Larry Ross was fourth, and Lloyd Agar would head with car number 09. Then there'd be the mix-up involving Jerry Marquis and Funky Karen with car number 121. But Marquis was a fighter, and he'd come back to the front of this field. D'Alessandro was on a roll. Dennis Albro was trying to hold him off, as Reggie Ruggiero was working over Ed Kennedy to try to take over one of those front-running positions. It was Marquis who was still trying to hold on at the checker as he'd take down yet another victory. Week number 13, Bruce D'Alessandro in the winner's circle, followed by Teddy Christopher and Dwight Jarvis. 14th week of competition, Dwight Jarvis over Reggie Ruggiero and Dan Avery. Final week of the season, Jerry Marquis into the winner's circle, Rusty Ball in for second, and S.J. Munson to round out the Monadnock Modified champion. 30 points determine the